What's going on, guys? This is Tower number 9, and I am coming to you here with another Star Wars Unlimited gameplay commentary video. This time I have Krennic here, and I am playing against Jyn. So it's Krennic Command versus Aggression Jyn, and let's see how these games go. So my Krennic Command build, this deck is kind of I have some early game stuff, but I'm really trying to ramp into the late game. And these videos were interesting because there was some kind of bug that made this deck even later game than it is normally, which is that I normally run the System Patrol Craft, which is the 4-cost 3/4 Sentinel in space. But for whatever reason, when I loaded this deck, it was registering the System Patrol Craft as the really big ship Avenger. So it was a even later game Krennic build than normal, and let's see how it holds up against then some aggressive Jyn play. So I'll lead off with the Seasoned Shore Trooper. 2-cost 2/3, and it gets +2 when you have 6 or more resources. My opponent plays a Lothal Insurgent. A 3/2 doesn't cause the random discard. I have a ton of ramp here. I actually have more ramp than I'd want. So one of the things about Krennic is you probably don't want to be playing that many ramp cards because you don't have a really late game leader. However, this is going to be a pretty cool turn for me because I can do the Energy Conversion Lab Super Laser Tech Ambush, which not only takes out my opponent's Lothal Insurgent, it also gets me a readied resource. Now, I don't have something to do with that resource to get value, but I did just clear a unit and ramp at the same time, which is really good. I then swing in with my Trooper for 2. My opponent has played out an Alliance X-Wing, which is a 2-cost. It is a 2-cost 1/3 that gets, I said Alliance X-Wing, a Green Squadron A-Wing, which is a 2-cost 1/3 with Raid 2. So it gets +2 power on the offense and gives it Infiltrator's skill for +1/+1 and Saboteur. Now, my hand here is actually not great for dealing with this. In theory, I can use Count Dooku later on, but it's not going to be relevant here at least. Then my opponent also gives it a Snapshot Reflexes, which will allow it to make an immediate attack and give it +1/+1. So now we are actually out of range of Count Dooku's ability because it can only kill a unit with 4 HP or less. But I am going to try and get some value here. I'm going to play out the TIE Advanced, buff up Krennic, and then Krennic can swing for 4, and Krennic also has Restore 2, and that's going to be really handy here because my base is taking some heavy hits. So with Restore 2, I can hopefully kind of outpace the incoming damage from that buffed up A-Wing. Maybe my TIE Advanced can swing into the A-Wing, do some damage, and then set it up to be removed by Dooku next turn. I have a few options there, and in the ground arena, I hit 6 resources, so my trooper there is buffed up. Now my opponent plays a wing leader and gives 2 experience to that A-Wing. So it's now up to toughness 7. Really don't like that. I end up deciding that I'm just going to go for the base here. Um, I sort of hope that my opponent uses the A-Wing on the advanced, but he does not. However, I have a good amount of healing in this game, and I'm confident that I can outpace my opponent in a race at this phase. So then we see a Lothal Insurgent. My opponent has not played anything else, I believe, so it shouldn't be a random, or was there something else played this turn? Based on the resources, oh, the Wing Leader was played this turn, that's right. Yeah, so there should be a random discard here. Okay, it looks like we forgot to do the random discard, so that is my fault. My apologies to my opponent. I should have realized that was going on. I think I didn't realize the Wing Leader had been played this turn. I play a Death Trooper and defeat the Lothal Insurgent with the 2 damage on play, and then I play Colonel Yularian, who will heal my base for 1. And at this time, the situation is looking pretty good for me. I've done 19 damage. My opponent has done, I believe, 7 damage, and so I will be able to probably close out the game this turn. The A-Wing there is a big problem in some sense, but it might not really matter if I just keep my focus up and push for more damage to the base. So Krennic will hit the base for 4, heal my base for 2. And at this point, I have a lot of units that can swing for lethal. My opponent My opponent has, stronger units on the board here, clears out Yularen, but it's not really going to matter. That seasoned short trooper comes in for lethal. Okay, so that was ended up being kind of a racing game, which is not what this deck normally wants to do necessarily, but it turned out okay for me. Krennic's Restore was able to do a lot. My apologies to my opponent for not doing the random discard from that Lothal Insurgent. I think maybe we didn't realize it was active. Okay, round two. Once again, Command Krennic versus Aggression Jyn. So once again, I can lead off this round with the Seasoned Shore Trooper, which seems like a pretty good start. And once again, I have multiple ramp components, which is probably more than I want. But just the just the Super Laser Technician alone is already a pretty good way to begin the game. My opponent will have the initiative this time, which might change things a bit, just in terms of what units would be most efficient for me. But there's not a ton I can really do about it, so I might just be in trouble if my opponent has a good early play. Ends up being Leia Organa Defiant Princess, ready in a resource, so we can see this leading into Greedo or R2. But ultimately, my opponent doesn't have something else and just takes the initiative. Probably a lucky break there for me. And yeah, there we see the first of those Avengers, which are not even supposed to be in this build. That is supposed to be a system patrol craft. Not entirely sure what was happening there. But, if the game goes long, it could end up being quite useful. My opponent uses a fleet lieutenant to have Leia trade with my seasoned short trooper. I deploy the super laser technician. Normally, I'm not ambushing him in this case because there isn't really value to ambushing. I think that I'm going to be able to get him defeated by that fleet lieutenant anyway. Ambushing to deal 2 damage wouldn't even remove the enemy unit, and I'd rather maintain my energy conversion lab. I didn't have something else that I could do with the one resource. So this time my opponent uses Jin's ability there to attack and give my unit -1 power. Does allow for a pretty straightforward defeat for my unit. I'm going to deploy Krennic. We quickly see a Spark of Rebellion played. My opponent gets to look at my hand and decide what to discard. So I have Agent Callus. Um, Look at your opponent's hand and discard a card from it. I have Agent Callus, Colonel Yularen, that Avenger, and a Super Laser Tech. My opponent removes Callus, which is pretty reasonable, honestly. Callus is probably the best card in that hand. I have Krennic defeat the so I have Krennic defeat the Fleet Lieutenant. My opponent hits me with another one of those Spark of Rebellions. This time removes my Avenger. I play out the Colonel, and then I play out the Super Laser Technician. And I am low on cards. I draw another Colonel Yularen, which I don't want to see, and a Death Trooper. Not an awesome situation for me, but I do have a substantial board advantage here. My opponent brings out a Fleet Lieutenant with no buff. Just a 3/3. So in this situation, one thing that I could do is just use Krennic to defeat it in one shot. It would leave Krennic on 1 life, though. The other main thing that I could do is I could have Death Trooper deal 2 damage and then send my System Patrol or my Death Star Stormtrooper into it. So I play the Death Trooper. When play, deal 2 damage to a friendly ground unit and 2 damage to an enemy ground unit. I deal 2 damage on the Death Trooper himself. My opponent removes the Death Trooper by using his base Tarkin Town to deal 3 damage to a damaged non-leader unit. I then take the trade with the Super Laser Tech, which is also ramping me towards my big ships, and then I deal a total of 5 damage there with Krennic and Yularen. And there we have the mighty Relentless. So this turn I'm going to do legitimately nothing, but next turn I'll hopefully play Relentless and get towards closing out the game. I could have played that. I could have played that um, Seasoned Shore Trooper, which is actually a pretty good unit at this point. I do have the 6 resources needed to get the bonus stats there. But the problem with the Seasoned Shore Trooper at this phase in the game is that if I were to play that, it would preclude my using my resourcing this turn, and it would get me further away from Relentless, which I really want. My opponent plays Sabine Explosives Expert. I defeat her with Krennic. My opponent deploys Jyn. I take the initiative. Jyn gets an Infiltrator skill, and Jyn defeats Krennic, taking only 2 damage because of her passive ability. So Jin's passive ability, when a friendly unit is attacking, the defender gets -1 power. So that applies to her as well. She's a friendly unit. And so with -1 power, that counteracts the buff from my Krennic being damaged. And Jyn takes only 2, which also means I'll have to see how this goes. But now I have some really powerful big units. Unfortunately, I have to resource one of them. I have an Avenger. I end up resourcing Count Dooku here. Jyn is a little out of range of Dooku right now. One thing that I could have done is have Yularen hit Jyn, and then if he doesn't buff Jyn further, I could play Count Dooku and defeat Jyn. That could be strong, but I'm hoping right now to just get Relentless out and use that to close the game. My opponent plays Black 1. When played or when defeated, you may discard your hand if you do draw 3 cards. I have 9 resources here, so I decided I'm actually going to play this Avenger because it will immediately defeat Black 1. So Avenger is itself a very heavy ship. When played or on attack, the opponent has to choose a unit they control and defeat. I choose a non-leader unit they control and defeat it. My opponent puts another 1-cost attachment on Jyn, this time a Snapshot Reflexes. Jyn now swinging for 6 damage. Luckily for me, I draw an Overwhelming Barrage, really strong card here. I'm going to be able to barrage Jyn off the board with Avenger, and then play Piet, which will allow me to potentially ambush Relentless next turn. So there's the barrage to clear off Jyn. Very happy to see that. Probably the best card in the game right now. This isn't it at its height, but it's still allowing me to remove that unit and give my Avenger a buff for this coming round, allowing it to swing in for, I think, 10 damage, 9 damage, something. However, my opponent waylays Avenger. Valid. Yularen swings in for 2. We see a Lothal Insurgent. This time we remember to do the random discard. And sorry for looking a little disheveled and coughing a bit. I am still have COVID unfortunately, and I'm still in kind of isolation here. I deploy Admiral Piet and restore 1 life from my base. My opponent deploys Ezra Bridger. One thing this lets me do is I could play Dooku with ambush here and defeat both my opponent's units. Another thing that I could do is just deploy one of my big spaceships and get set up for trouble later. Relentless in particular is useful here because by deploying Relentless, I would be able to make it so that my opponent couldn't play the first event. But here I opt to play Avenger instead because it will kill one of my opponent's units. These units aren't that valuable, so I think it would have been better for me to go for Relentless, which also would have healed me by 1. Could be wrong. Han Solo arrives and defeats Colonel Yularen with ambush. I could hit the enemy base for 1 or something, but I'd rather just take the initiative, use my barrage to clear these units at the start of the turn. Ezra hits for 3, looks at the top card. And ends up discarding a Lothal Insurgent, not the most relevant unit of this phase. I'm feeling pretty comfy with this situation. I have big shit. We're ramped up to my big ships. And I have big ships, and I also have this barrage, which is going to wipe my opponent's board. And now Avenger can hit the enemy base for like 10 or something, and I can still also deploy a Death Trooper. Overall, it's just looking pretty good for me. Mace Windu shows up and defeats my guy there. But Avenger swings for 10. And I could deploy that Death Trooper, damage Mace Windu, do whatever, but also Avenger can just swing and win the game at the start of the next turn. Avenger's attack also causes Mace Windu to be defeated because on attack the opponent has to choose and defeat a unit. So my opponent takes the initiative, and now can he stop Avenger? The answer is no, and A-Wing appears and Avenger blows up a base. So even though that unit was put in my deck by accident, it turned out to be pretty valuable this game. Avenger actually getting a lot of results. And yeah, so we're 2-0 right now with Command Krennic against Jyn, and we are going to go game three. I had actually, when I was doing the commentary there, I had forgotten for a moment that Avenger would just remove Mace, which of course made just attacking the enemy base seem like an even higher value play for me. Um, so that one went pretty well, and now we're going to move to the next round. All right, so now we got let's see, Krennic versus Jyn round three. Let's see if we can repeat the performance here. Lothal Insurgent leads off the game. I play a regional governor, and I believe the card that I name here, I think I name Wing Leader here. So when played, you may name a card, and opponents can't play that card. So I don't want a Wing Leader coming out here. That's one of the Wing Leader is one of the strongest cards as a turn two play, in my opinion, and I really would rather not have that hitting me. My opponent sends the Lothal Insurgent to just hit my base directly. I'm going to probably go for the resupply here. So I have been hitting ramp pretty consistently, which is nice to see. If anything, I've had too much ramp. My opponent then plays Ezra, pretty solid card. And I think I just take the initiative. Okay, so one thing that jumps out at me looking at this hand is that I can play the Death Trooper and have him deal the 2 damage to defeat that Lothal Insurgent. I can then also play Piet. I can then also bring out Krennic. So I'm going to have indeed Death Trooper takes down Lothal Insurgent. Now, one thing that I could have done here and probably should have done here is I actually could use the energy conversion lab to kill both my opponent's units here because I could have ambushed, I could have resolved when played before ambush, used the ability to defeat the Lothal Insurgent, and then because the Death Trooper is now damaged for the ambush attack, he's strength 4 and can defeat Ezra in one hit. I think that would have been better than what I actually did. My opponent attacks with Ezra, dealing 3 damage to my base, seeing the top card and playing it. It is a Green Squadron A-Wing. My opponent then plays another Green Squadron A-Wing, so kind of nasty stuff there. I deploy Krennic. My opponent can take the initiative here, could also use Tarkintown to defeat my Death Trooper. I think it ends up taking the initiative, not sure. Krennic hits the base for 2. Oh, I think it was maybe a pass there, actually. So then Krennic hits the base for 2, heals my base for 1, or heals my base for 2 as well, thanks to restore 2. And we're moving forward. My opponent has a pretty strong presence in space and has done some nice early damage, but I have a much stronger force in the ground arena right now, and I'm also ramped up a bit, so we'll see what happens. So my opponent leads off this turn by using Tarkintown, defeating that Death Trooper. I'm gonna bring out the Academy Defense Walker, and I think I ambush it here with Kit and resolve ambush before the ability. Which allows me to put a +1 counter on my own unit. I'm happy that Tarkintown's been used up also, so I can't pick off that Defense Walker. Krennic swings in for 2, healing my base for 2. These A-Wings are strafing my base for 3 damage each. And then I have these 2 kind of weaker support characters with the Governor and Piet. My opponent brings out a Falcon. Governor's going to swing there since I know the Falcon's probably swinging myself and I can swinging itself and I can still take the initiative. And my opponent then hits me with Spark of Rebellion. So I reveal Vanquish and a Death Trooper, and Vanquish goes bye-bye. Hoping to draw a big ship here. I do see Avenger, and this is an interesting situation. So we're going to see a rare case where resupply is played after somebody is already has their units mostly deployed. So the reason that I'm doing this is, well, first I'm gonna just lead off with doing some damage to the base here. So that's going to be a 6 damage or a 7 damage swing there from the Academy Defense Walker. It's 5 base plus 1 for the experience, and then plus 1 for being damaged. So 7 damage to the enemy base. Falcon hits me for 3. Krennic hits my opponent for 2. Heals me for 2. Opponent sends in a tie. I resupply here. I said a tie. I mean an A-wing. Other A-wing hits my base. I've taken substantial damage here, but I can potentially do some really big damage myself with this Avenger next turn. So hopefully that resupply is going to get me out of the danger zone. Jyn hits the field, but the only thing she can attack is that Academy Defense Walker, which would actually kill her in one hit normally. However, my opponent plays a Waylay, sending the Defense Walker back to base. And then Surprise Strikes Krennic. Now, this is actually a critical error because Surprise Strike on my base would actually just win the game immediately. So the Surprise Strike on Krennic, I think my opponent might not have realized how damaged I was. Um, but Surprise Striking, yeah, so Surprise Striking Krennic instead of the base means that I'm still alive and can potentially make a comeback here. Obviously, a comeback is not guaranteed. My opponent opts to withdraw the Falcon to hand. I play Avenger, and so I actually misplay this. So I play Avenger and have it ambush one of the A-wings. So this is actually wrong in some sense. Uh, I believe I should not have taken damage here because the on played would have killed the other A-wing before the ambush attack went off. But I guess I seek or the on attack ability would have killed it. But I guess I sequenced wrong. So then my regional governor swings into Jyn to soften her up so that I can then ambush with the Academy Defense Walker. Um, Han obviously is a big problem, but I can ambush with the Academy Defense Walker here. Um, I was originally thinking I could just attack the enemy base and win, but I'm actually off by 1. However, when I play the Academy Defense Walker, I use the Energy Conversion Lab to ambush Jyn. The Academy Defense Walker defeats Jyn, takes 4 damage, has an experience on it, has a bonus damage. So Han can, of course, attack and defeat the Academy Defense Walker, but the Walker also gives an experience token to Avenger, and now Avenger can actually hit for 10 because I believe it's 8 base plus 1 for experience plus 1 for being damaged. So even though Han can kill the Walker, the Avenger can just kill the base, and I do end up getting the win here. So ultimately went 3-0 in this series, but I do have to point out that if my opponent had spent the surprise strike with Jyn to just go for the face instead of attacking Krennic, this one would have been a loss. So I ended up going 3-0, but this one very easily could have been against me, and it might have ended up being 2-1. All right, so that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.